name is William Justice, and today I have a small confession to make. It's not really a big deal, but I kind of have an irrational fear of the keyframe editor in Davinci Resolve Fusion. It's not like nightmare afraid, but every time I click it, I kind of get this overwhelmed, uneasy feeling. Actually, I don't think I've used it in any of my videos. Well, that's about to change. It's time to conquer the keyframe editor fear. This entire intro was created in Davinci Resolve Fusion, and I only used 12 individual keyframes. I made all the timing adjustments using the keyframe editor. I still think it's a bit quirky and the UI is odd, but it's really effective for making quick timing adjustments to your animation. Good timing and sequencing can make the difference between a dull animation and an exciting, engaging experience for your viewers. The keyframe editor can help take your animations to the next level. I'm going to cover the basics of the keyframe editor, and then I'm going to show you how I set up this intro animation, how to use groups to shift the sequencing and timing for entire sections of your video, and how to use groups to reuse the animation sequences. This video is an experiment and an exercise to help me learn how to use the keyframe editor. If you want to check out what I've built, I've included the settings file for the Fusion animation in the description for this video. If you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Leave comments and feedback below. I'd really love to hear what you think. I appreciate everybody's support. Let's do some keyframing. Okay, we have a blank Fusion composition here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set up a real quick text animation, and then we're going to use the keyframe editor to adjust some of the timing of the pieces on that animation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a background and drag that into the media out. Then let's add a text node, drag it into the output of the background to create a merge, and we're going to type in keyframes for the text. Open up the inspector and let's make it a little bit larger. I'm going to put a animated line right under the keyframes part. So we're going to add another merge node, and we're going to put a background on top of that. Let's set the color to red, and we're going to put a mask on it. So with background selected, hit the rectangle mask tool, and we're going to size this and move it to where it's just right underneath the keyframes. Let's drag it down to where it's right underneath the keyframes and expand it out to about the same size, a little smaller. So to animate this, we're going to just use a couple of masks on these merge nodes. So with merge one selected, hit the rectangle mask tool and size it up to about the size of the keyframes, and we can adjust the position to do a reveal. Let's select merge 2, hit the rectangle mask tool, and we're going to size this up to where it's about the size of the red line. Okay, so let's set up this animation. So let's go to frame 0. So the rectangle 2 selected. So let's select rectangle 2. We're going to hit a keyframe on the center property over here in the inspector, and we're going to drag this over to the left here so that we don't see any of the text. We're going to go over about 10 frames and take the mask and drag it right back so we have a reveal of the keyframes text. And we're going to do the same thing with the rectangle around the red line. Go to the frame 0. We're going to keyframe the position and drag it all the way over so that we can't see the line. Go over to frame 10 and bring it back. So this is our animation right now. Okay, we're going to add one more text node to our animation. I'm going to drag that in and take the output of the merge, and we're going to call this one text animation. And let's drag it down and make it a little bit bigger so that we can see it. So this one, we're going to click on frame 10 and keyframe the size property, and let's take it all the way down. And we'll go over about 10 more frames and bring the size property up. So now that we have our basic animation set up, let me show you how to use the keyframe editor to adjust the timing of the animations. So we're going to unclick inspector to make that go away, and then we're going to click keyframes right up here in this little keyframe tab. And what you see is you see some bars, and these represent each of the nodes that have keyframes associated with them. So if there's any animations, you're going to see these right here. So we have the two rectangles and our text that we animated. You notice that the bar color matches the color of the node, so the green on the text, it looks like text nodes are also going to have the title of the text in there, so that'll be a little bit easier to find. So each of these nodes, we can open them up, and what you're going to see is the properties that are being animated. So the text 2 node, you can see that we're animating the size property, and the two rectangles, you see that we're animating the position of the mask. Let's close these up. One thing you'll notice, it has a timeline look to it. The order of these does not matter, so it doesn't matter which one's on top or bottom, it doesn't change the display at all. So let's open these back up. So what you'll see is these squares. The squares represent keyframes that have been set on the property. So on the size property, this represents the first keyframe and that represents the second. We have the time going across the top, so you can see as we change the time, the animation is changing. So this first keyframe right here, let me open up the inspector real quick so we can kind of see what's going on. So you'll see that when we go to the first keyframe, right here, the size is 0. You'll notice that this is a little bit lower down. And as the value increases, you can see the line go up to the second keyframe. And if we added another keyframe, it would put it in there for us, and you can see that it adjusts it. So let's animate another property so you can see what it looks like if a node has multiple properties with animations. We'll go to about the end of that animation, and let's change the tracking. We're going to keyframe the tracking, go over a few frames, and let's expand it just a bit. And you'll see what happens. There's a little glitch here in the display. I think if you close it down and open it back up, there you go, okay, the line goes away. So you can see that we're animating the size property and the character spacing property. Okay, one thing to note is it's a little bit odd the way it works. These bars right here represent when this node is actually going to be displayed in the animation. So you see it goes from frame 0 to the very end, and that's the time at which this node is going to operate in the animation. You can take that and you can move the starting and ending points. So let's make some adjustments to the bar. So if you want to change when this node starts and stops, you can grab the front of the bar and drag it, and you can grab the end of the bar and drag it down to make the time shorter. It's a little bit odd because if the playhead goes outside of where this bar is, this node really doesn't do anything for the animation. So if you see, if we move this over, the text is not there, and as soon as we move the playhead into the bar, we're going to see the text. So you got to be careful when you're adjusting that, because you can get confused and things can disappear. Like if we move to the end, the text is not there. So let's take the bar and extend it, and the text shows back up. Okay, so there's a lot of display options. I'm going to go over a few which are helpful. I kind of encourage you to poke around and check things out. You can right click on different things and see the different kind of options that you can set. You can click on the bars, the labels, or even in the node area. There's some options up here in the right as well. Okay, you can adjust the scale by dragging the slider here. One thing when adjusting the scale is you want to make sure that your points are in the middle. Otherwise you kind of lose them and you have to scroll around to try to find them. So to move this area, you can click the center mouse button and you can drag it around. So let's put the points in the middle, and then we can expand them right like that so that they're a little bit easier to see. This icon here resets the scale so that you can see the full animation. So we'll click that and you got the full thing back. So if you scale it, you click that, it takes you back. So this icon right here lets you choose how you're going to view them. So you can sort by name, by type, by when they start. There's also an option, right now it's checked, it's animated, so that it's going to show you only the animated nodes. If we uncheck that, we have a lot more stuff in the list. You're seeing the merges and the backgrounds and all of the nodes that are not animated. This is where it kind of confused me, because it gets really busy and I kind of got overwhelmed trying to deal with it all. I'm going to click this option and only show the animated ones right now. So that gets rid of a lot, but if you have a whole bunch of things and you're really doing a real complex animation, there's going to be a lot in there. So one of the things that you can use is this option here with these 3 dots. You can choose show only selected tools. So it's only going to show you which nodes are selected. So right now we have text 2 selected. We could select one of the rectangles. And if you want to see more things, you can multi-select. So let's click text 2, and you can hold down the control key and click some more nodes. And that way we're bringing in the 3 nodes that we want to animate right there. This is important if you have a whole lot of things and you want to drill down and find the specific ones that you want to animate. There's a couple other options that are interesting in here. If we right click on this bar, there's some scaling options. There's also an option to display the point values, which is what that little square is right here. So if we take that off and uncheck it, we're just going to get a line where each of the keyframes is. The point values are nice because it's going to actually allow us to change the value by dragging it right here. So I'm going to put that back. Options and display point values, and see we got our squares back. Another thing is that it's a really tiny space, so it can feel pretty cramped. What you can do is you can right click in here, and there is a all line size, and we can set that to medium, and that's going to take our lines and increase the size if you want to kind of get a little more detail. And that also applies to each of these. So you can right click on one, set the line size to small. So this one's small and the other ones are large. Now that we know how to navigate around a little bit, let's adjust the timing. So let's start doing some animation. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate these 2 rectangles. So I'm going to click the rectangles on the bottom for the rectangle masks. And I want this to be a little bit bigger so I can see the points better. So we're going to go to all line size, medium. And we'll go to the beginning of the animation. So this is the first keyframe and the second keyframe for both of those masks. So the simplest thing we can do is just take one of these points and drag it. So let's see, so rectangle 3 is our line underneath. And let's say we wanted that line to come in a little bit later. We can take this point and move it out, and the beginning point and move it. So the line is going to animate in slightly after the text. So you can just take any point and you can drag it around to change the timing. The other thing you can do is if you want to change the entire timing of a property, you can click off of the points and you can drag both of the points together. So let's do the opposite. Let's have our line here, and we're going to click on the bottom rectangle for the text, and we're going to have the text come in after the line animates. And the last thing I'm going to do here is, this is where it gets a little quirky, because so when this is selected, you see it's highlighted, and that means that you can move both of the points together, or actually all the points, whatever keyframes you have. To move an individual point, you need to click off of it, and then you can take that individual point and drag it. So let's take this one and drag it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the red line is going to start, and it's going to animate slower, and the text is going to come in right on top of it. Okay, so we know how to move individual points. We know how to select an entire property and drag those around. So what else can we do? From the spline editor, you can actually do some easing. You can do a little bit of that from here. If you click on a point, you can right click on it, and you can hit F to do the flat curve. Right click on that one and hit F to do the flat curve. You can do the smooth, or you can turn it back into a line. You also can highlight the points and then hit F, and you'll notice it changed those right there. So that gives us a little bit of smoothing with our animation. Okay, so what if we wanted to increase the length of the animation, or maybe make it go a little bit faster? We can stretch it or compress it. That's what this time stretch is going to do. So you hit this time stretch icon, and then you highlight the points that you want to stretch, and it's going to put a box around those. So if we wanted the animation to go slower, we just take that box and move it out, and it's going to proportionally stretch out those points. If we want it to go faster, we can make the box smaller, and we're going to speed up the entire animation. So uncheck that. And so basically these are just really easy to move around. Just takes a little bit of playing to get a feel for it. Okay, let's take a look at this text size animation. So let's click text 2, and we'll bring that into the keyframe editor. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger by all line size medium, so we can kind of see them. And here's our two animations. So we can do the same thing. We can click on the size, and we can maybe make the size right there, and then click on the character spacing and have the character spacing move to the part after the resize. Another thing we can do is we can actually add some keyframes. So we can right click on this line here and say set key, and that added a keyframe for us. Then we can take that and we can click off of that, and we can drag this keyframe around to adjust the size. So if we want to bring the tracking in, this is the character spacing, we can bring the character spacing all the way down, squish it, bring it back up. And same thing as before, we can highlight these points and hit F to flatten them out, give them a little easing curve. And we'll go back over here. Let's drag this point. Let's click off of that. That's one of the things is sometimes all of the points are selected and they drag together. It's just, you can't tell when they're selected. It's a little bit odd. So you have to click off, and now I'm only moving one point as opposed to all of them. So let's add another one in there. We'll add a set key, and we'll take this one and we'll move it back up. So we're animating just by doing that set key and moving these points around. So let's say you wanted to repeat a piece of your animation. You can take these these keyframes right here, and I'm going to highlight them. Again, you can't tell they're highlighted, but they are. Hit Control C. We're going to select our track and hit Control V to paste it. And we're actually adding into our animation. See, so the text tracking is going to go in and out like that. Same thing as before, we can compress it if we do the time stretch, highlight those points, and then bring them in. It's going to go a lot faster now. Another thing you can do is when you're moving around in here, sometimes it's difficult to grab this playhead up here. If you hit Control and Alt, the playhead will go right to where your cursor is. So you can move it around really quickly that way. You don't have to try to grab it up there. So let's unclick the stretch. We're going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you here is the spreadsheet. So let's click the size property and then click this little spreadsheet icon. And this is really cool because what it does is it shows you all of the keyframes and what the value is. So you can see right here, it's 11.41, so you can do fractions of frames. The value is going to be 0, then frame around 21, that's the value, and so forth. So If we wanted to move a keyframe, so like this last keyframe here that's at frame 30, if we say we wanted to move that to frame 50, we just type in 50 and hit enter, and that moved the keyframe for us. We can also adjust the value. We can set it to 0 right there. Okay, so we can also use this spreadsheet down here to add values. So let's go to frame, let's say frame 60 and hit enter. We got a keyframe and we're gonna set the value at 1 and hit enter. And we can keep going, frame 70. You gotta hit enter, you can't click off of it. Frame 70, enter, and we'll set the value to 0.5. So that's a real quick way to see all your values and adjust them if you want to get them exactly to a certain amount. You can do it right here from the keyframe editor. Obviously this one has a lot more keyframes, so you could scroll to see all the values. Okay, let me show you how I set up the intro and how we can use groups to copy animation sequences and reuse them throughout the composition. The Fusion settings file is going to be included in the description of this video so you can download it and try it out for yourself. The video is divided into 9 vertical segments, and we animate slices of images into those different segments. I'm going to start by showing you how I set up each of the segments. It's basically a gradient across each of these. So let's take a look at the background. Basically this is a really light gradient. Let me open up the inspector. You can see that it's like that. It goes from a black to a transparent. There's a transform that takes that background and makes it into 1/9 of the size of the composition. So you can see here the X size. To compute the X size, you have to make sure that use size and aspects is unchecked. That way you can actually adjust the X and Y size independently. So the Y size is 1, which is the full height. For the X size, we can do a computation. We can go 1 divided by 9. And that sets this slice to be 1/9 of the composition size. We have a duplicate node, take a look at that, which duplicates this slice across this way 9 times, and we just set the center position to offset it to repeat across the animation, and we're merging that in on top of everything. The media in is, this is the background when I'm talking, and we're going to animate things on top of this. So the background goes into a merge, and this is where the slices come in. So when we play it, you'll see that we have these slices of this little purple mountain thing, and that's this media in 1. So let's go to 2 viewers, and we'll put the output in viewer 2, and this media in 1 in viewer 1. So media in 1 is the input, and these nodes right here slice it up into these pieces, these vertical segments, and animate them. So the way this works is we have a pipe router here, and we have 3 rectangles that represent those slices. And we're using these with a matte control to mask off this section. So let's take a look at this first one here. So I'm gonna hit 1 on this transform. So we're gonna see it in this viewer. And we have this rectangle with a matte control. So the rectangle goes into the garbage matte of the matte control, and that masks off everything that's outside of the rectangle. So if we disable the matte control, you'll see the whole thing. And it goes into a transform node. It starts the slice off the screen, animates it up into position, and as we move along through the animation, it's going to animate it off of the screen. And this is where I'm getting the 12 keyframes. So I set 4 keyframes on each of these slices. A starting position, animate into view, hold that position, and then animate out of the view. So we have this rectangle and that rectangle. So if we take a look at all of them, 2 over here, and we'll get rid of that viewer. So that's what it looks like for that piece. So we're gonna use grouping to be able to move this around and retime it and set up other animated sections. I'm gonna highlight all these elements, including the pipe router that the input goes into. We're gonna right click on it and say group. So now we have a group, right? This group represents the entire animation of all of the slices. So if we wanna animate more, all we need to do is copy that group, and then we can use the keyframe editor to change the timing of when that group animation happens. So let's make a couple other ones. So we're gonna copy the group, highlight it, hit Control C, and hit Control V, drag it into the merge here, so we're merging this group in. And this one, let's do one of the text animations that I did. So we're gonna take a background and bring it into the group, and we'll set the background color, and we'll hit 2 on the media out to see the output. So this background right here, and let's change it to like a blue, this background is sitting on top of the first image. So what we can do is we can move it into a different position. So we're gonna go to Merge 2, and we're gonna change the center position to 1 divided by 6. That's gonna be 1/6 of the way across the width of the composition, which is this spot right here. That moved it over. Let's do one more. So we're gonna hit copy that group again, paste it, and let's see, actually let's put some text on this background. We'll drag it in, and text we're gonna call keyframes. In this other one, let's put the video. So we'll take the media in 1, which is the video of me talking, and we're gonna put that into this last group here. And you'll notice that that's right on top. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the position of it The X position's in the center, so these three right here are in the center. Actually, let's do a resize on it. So in the media N1, we're gonna add a transform node. Right after the group, we're gonna add a transform node. So let's take this transform and scale it up. So we're scaling up these three in the center right there. And we're gonna move it over. So with the merge selected, we're gonna set the X position at 5 divided by 6. That's 5/6 of the way. And that moves that one over. Now, what these transforms do is they allow you to reposition the image within that segment, within those segments. And you can adjust the size and angle to create different kinds of effects. We have 3 segments coming in, but they're all coming in at the same time. So this is where we can use the groups. So let's open up the keyframes area and we'll bring that up so we can see a lot of it. And let's select these groups. So we have our 3 groups there. Now, if we want to adjust the timing to have these animated in at different times, all we have to do is shift the bars. So we can take this group and move it that way and move that one over there. So now they're going to come in at different times. So we'll shift some of these groups around a little bit. And so we've effectively changed the sequencing of this animation. So it's really simple to adjust. Now, a couple of things real quick. So let's say take this group here in the middle. That's this first one that we set up. We can use some transform nodes to get it to animate in the opposite direction. So right now you see that it animates going up. Off of this media N1, let's add a transform node. And then after the group, let's add a transform node. And on the first transform, we're going to flip it vertically. And the second transform node, we're going to flip it vertically again. And now what you'll notice is the segments are going to drop in from the top. That's supposed to coming in from the bottom. Okay, so if we want these segments here, these vertical segments, to be on the screen for longer, we can adjust the timing by going to the keyframe editor. So let's select group 1, which is these mountains right here, and open up this group and zoom in a little bit. Highlight the second keyframes and we can just drag them all over. So the first 2 keyframes bring the segment onto the screen and the last 2 take it off the screen. So by moving these last ones, it will be on the screen for a longer period of time. A couple other things is you can apply some effects to a lot of these to get some interesting things. You can do some opacity and some blending, you can do some blurs, all kinds of animations on these segments as they're coming in and out. I was just trying to keep it simple for this tutorial, but there's really a lot that you can do. The settings file that's going to be linked in the description is going to have 3 of these groups. I'm going to set up one for the left, one for the middle, and one for the right. And if you want to use it, you can just copy those groups, merge them into the sequence, and then come into the keyframe editor and adjust the timing. So all you're really going to need to do is the group is going to be sitting here like this. You can just merge it in and then take whatever media you want and connect it up to the group. And this group contains the sequencing and animations for the slices. You can copy this and put it in as many times as you want to set up your animation with different graphics and videos coming in and out of the sequence as you need. Hope you learned something from this video. I know I did. After putting this together, I'm gonna have a lot more confidence using the keyframe editor, and I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna be using it in a lot of videos and animations from now on. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe and comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Really appreciate everybody's support. Thanks for watching.